In this episode of the Ministry of Motion Pictures podcast,
you know, how to make it in Hollywood. Dude, how do you imitate that? You know what I mean? Like, how do I do a seminar, Todd, and say, well, you know, guys, here's 4 easy steps on getting a studio film made. It's just, you know, it's just, and it is. I just look back obviously and say the Lord just orchestrated that.
This is part 2 of my interview with writer and director Brad Silverman. Brad is the director of No Greater Love, Grace Unplugged, and the forthcoming feature film, Selfie Dad. In episode 14, Brad talked about how he got his start as a filmmaker making films for Lionsgate and how Grace Unplugged came about. In this episode, Brad talks about the dry years that he faced following Grace Unplugged and tells us what he's been doing in the past few years and what's in store for him in the immediate future. And what I appreciate about Brad is that he has a godly, level-headed perspective on all the situations he faces in his career. This is episode 15.
So what happened after Grace Unplugged?
Well, Grace Unplugged was one of those that got critical success, but not a ton of commercial success.
Yeah.
So it ended up commercially not performing the way it should. But it's one of those weird dichotomies where, by most people's standards, you'd say it was a success. Like in my world, it was a success because we're not, looking for world domination here. But for a studio, they're looking for bigger returns.
Right.
And so that was part of why we ended up not continuing with Lionsgate. We had many meetings after that, and we just couldn't quite find the groove after that.
Okay.
So, and it really boiled down to, it's a tough sell. Like if I look and said, hey, this film's going to profit, $1.5 million, free and clear, whatever. I'm just an example. We go, okay, take it, right? Why wouldn't you? That's a lot of money. But for certain studios, it's okay, and I'm not saying that whatever the number is, it's like it should show a higher return to warrant it, to make it part of the slate. Because there's only, obviously for a theatrical release, there's only so many slots you can do. It's a very finite number for a studio. So long story, or I should say the short version of that is that we just kind of chose in 14-ish, we just said, let's not go in that direction. And just kind of meandered around and thought, like anything, I'll have 7 offers. And I had a few, and just nothing really caught my attention. Nothing seemed to be a good fit. But like anything, Todd, I mean, one day becomes the next month, becomes the next year really fast.
Yep. And
all of a sudden 2 years go by, and I'm like, I got nothing. So, but the Lord never didn't provide. The Lord was nothing but gracious and kind. I'm sure my attitude was not always gracious and kind, but, it was a humbling process for me. I mean, it's definitely a humbling time for me.
Yeah.
I look back at that as a failure, no doubt. And, so that's kind of what happened. And so for a couple of years, Russ and I bounced around thinking about different projects and, we get close on certain things, and we went in different directions. And then it just seemed like philosophically we were kind of going in different directions. We're still best of friends and always will. Russ Rice is my producing partner back then. And so I want to say by the end of 2015, he was ready to go in a totally different direction. So we parted ways as best of friends, and so we just kind of, that was that. So that was the end of that era.
Yeah.
And you just kind of had to rebuild it. So that's what we started doing now at Kappa Studios.
So how'd you get involved with Kappa?
Well, Kappa is the go-to post-production facility for all things faith and family. Located in Burbank, right near Warner Brothers. If anyone knows anything about Burbank area, you got Warner Brothers, Universal Studios, and Disney, all within 7 miles of each other, really, maybe 10, I don't know. And it's maybe 5 miles, I don't know. And Kappa is like literally down the street from Warner Brothers.
Huh.
And so it's this little oasis, diamond in the rough post-production house that I was a client of on No Greater Love and Grace. So I met the people here at Kappa as a client. And if anyone's been involved in filmmaking, when you're making a movie, there, especially in the post-production side of it, if you're the director, there's a ton of downtime. You could be in a color session or a coloring session or a sound session, and it might take them an hour to get it ready, so you've got an hour to kill.
Right.
And I would just get to know Paul, the owner of Kappa. Paul is just a godly man who I just love like a brother, and so I just got to know Paul really well through the project as a client. And it always seemed like, man, it seemed like Paul and I were a great fit for one another to sort of team up. And Paul, who knew Russ very well, he would later tell me that he never wanted to approach the idea of Paul and I teaming up because he respected Russ so much.
Huh.
And I respected Paul for saying that.
Wow.
You know, Paul's like, hey, I don't want to come in between you guys.
Yeah.
It just felt like, you know, it didn't seem to make sense as a trio.
Right.
But once Russ and I parted ways, literally within, I'm not joking, within minutes, and this is purely God's providence. Paul and I go to the same church. How I got hooked up with Kappa is this. Paul and I go to the same church, and we were on a men's retreat, okay, up in the hills, up in the mountains, on a men's retreat for our church. And I talked to Russ, and Russ says, hey, man, I'm moving to Texas. So Rob's like, wow, okay, that's that. So Russ was officially moving to Texas. So we were officially done as a team because I didn't feel that's where I was going to go. And literally at the men's retreat, I'm like talking to Russ, and across the way I'm seeing Paul in my eyesight. So I go to Paul. I go, Paul, I want to say on a Saturday night. This is a Saturday. You know, the retreat goes through Sunday, right? And it's a Saturday night. I go, Paul, by the way, for what it's worth, if you still want to do this team up thing, just so you know, the timing's good for me right now. Something just opened up for me. And Paul says, he goes, hey, Brad, do you want to go? Like, can we leave? And we literally left the men's retreat on a Saturday night. And, okay, that's probably a confession, not a brag. And we literally drive down the hill. And in God's providence, I'm navigating, and I get us lost on our way home, which gave us like an extra 40-minute drive than we shouldn't have had. But in that time, by the time we got down, we had all the particulars worked out, and we were ready to go.
Wow.
So again, I don't know how you plan this stuff. I don't know how you emulate this stuff. It's just God's amazing providence at the right place at the right time. Trials everywhere, but that's how. So that was in, I want to say 2016, and Paul and I have been together ever since.
That's great. That's an encouraging story just to hear that God is so intimately involved in such a clear fashion.
Amen. Amen, amen.
I mean, that's got to be a source of strength for you.
You know what, Todd? I'll say it this way. I don't talk about it enough, you know, or I don't talk about it a lot. So, one thing I'm very guilty of is I'll just gotta get in the grind and just put my head down and work.
Yeah.
And
well, we all do that.
Yeah, you bet. And in that process, I forget to be thankful. I forget to pause and praise God for that. And in fact, kind of bringing a few stories together, again, a confession here, as you talk about God's goodness. It was Mark Berg, who was obviously the producer of Grace and the Saw franchise. I want to say it was the second to last day we were shooting Grace Unplugged, and this defines part of my personality here in a negative way. It's the second to last day of Grace Unplugged. We're shooting in Los Angeles. It's crazy. It's hectic. You know, we shot most of it in Alabama, but we're shooting in Los Angeles now, and I'm running around, you know, just totally. When I direct, I get so focused, so dialed in, and Mark. I hear Mark going, Brad. And I'm like, oh, great, not now. He goes, Brad. And I'm like, ugh. All I'm thinking is I don't have time. I'm busy. I'm doing Mark, not now. But I'm thinking, oh, my goodness, this dude, wrote a big check for this movie to get made. I should probably see what he needs. And so finally, you know, in my inner, I'm sure outside I looked fine. Inside I'm grumbling in my heart. And he goes, Brad, come here. And I'm like, ugh. So I finally go, yes, Mark, what's up? He goes, Brad, we're making a movie. and he looks, he goes, isn't this fun? Keep in mind, Mark's made a lot of movies. He was rebuking me, is what he was doing. He was like, Brad, will you just pause for a minute, look around, and be thankful. And he literally said, he goes, you could be laying bricks right now.
Yep.
He goes, you're making a movie, man. And he probably saw stress in me. He probably saw, something other than a kind, gracious, loving, humble, thankful person.
Yep.
And so I was, rightly rebuked by Mark, and I never forget that. And to this day, that was in 2012, we made it. We talked about my features. We're doing other TV shows at Kappa. We're doing a lot of stuff at Kappa, not just features, but I kid you not, Todd, I don't think any project goes by, whether in the edit bay, just 3, 4, 5 times, ever since Mark said that to me, I do that now. Whenever things get crazy, I go, hey, guys, come here, everyone. Pause for 1 second. Hey, guys, we're making a movie.
Yeah.
Isn't this fun? Guys, how many of you, where are you from? I'm from Pittsburgh. Where are you from? I'm from New Jersey. I'm from Argentina. Hey, why'd you come to L.A.? Did you come to make movies? Dude, guess what? We're making a movie. Do you know how many people would like to be making a movie right now?
Yeah.
Let's be grateful. And when I'm the director, it sort of sets a tone, right? And so all that to say, I learned a lot on that, and I to this day I'll never forget that when Mark said that.
That is good. That's really good. But when you're in the middle of shooting, it's tough. I've even had producers who've moved into directing, and one producer in particular, after he finished, he said, "I am never, ever, ever directing again."
Yeah,
it's not for everybody.
That's just it. It's like it sounds crazy, but I thrive on that.
Yeah.
Like we're all built differently. Like I love this is so weird in some people's eyes, but like this is going to sound crazy, but when things go wrong, when things start falling apart, I find a fun in that when you have to, like, on the fly, creatively solve problems. Don't get me wrong, like, other things will totally bug me and stress me out in life. But when it comes to that, like, we'll be in the middle of an exterior shoot in, like, a windstorm. Like, it's sort of like, it hasn't rained here in 106 years, and it's like a thunderstorm, or whatever. And just things you just can't plan for. And it's not like I'm godly about it or spiritual. It's just like the way God's wired me. I'm like, okay, guys, we got to figure this out. Let's go. Like that part I actually do enjoy. It sounds crazy, but having said that, to your point, in general, I can be at my best, and I can absolutely be at my worst when I'm directing. No question.
Yeah, for sure. So, Grace Unplugged. Now you're off that. You're at Kappa. And you're doing this TV series?
Yeah. So we've got a couple things at Kappa. We've got I'd say about 3-4 projects in the works. We have one feature film that is essentially done, and we have 2 pilots to 2 TV shows that are essentially done. My background is mostly in features, so to get the cadence of TV is just a little different. In fact, one of the first show I did was a reality show.
Huh.
And the first cut of this reality show that I was technically directing, it was they watched the cut, it was very slow and like development. Everyone's like watching, what is this? Like, Brad, pick it up, dude. What are you doing? And so Paul, who's been in this business a minute or two, he's been doing this for 30 years, Paul, who owns Kappa and the producer on all these shows, he brings in a different editor who understands that much better than I do, and this thing just pops.
Huh.
So the magic of editing, so even though I was the director of this first reality show called World Race, and at the same time, I just was the pupil in the room, just enjoying learning from this reality editor who's this genius level guy, and he just made that show work. So just I guess in the category of that is, we got a couple. We only do Kappa is 2 things just in general. Kappa is, yes, we do original content, the shows I'm talking about, but Kappa also still is a post house for other people strictly in the faith and family world.
Huh.
So part of what I do is just because I've been in the faith and family world, because of the films I've done, I just know a lot of people. So we could be at a conference, we could be at just hanging out with folks, it could be on the phone. I'm just like, hey, bring your project to Kappa. So I'm always spreading the word to other faith and family filmmakers and TV makers and digital makers, whatever it is, to bring their, to talk to Kappa to be their post house. Wow. So I do, that's just sort of, do that, and then also the, content creating. So it's just Kappa is kind of, I guess, this holistic thing is what I'm saying. That, we're kind of this one entity where it's, I'm not strictly writing and directing. I'm also in various ways helping out in other projects. There's a lot of projects that I know you've heard of and know about that we're just involved with, and it's just a joy to sort of be in, kind of immersed. We're kind of becoming, I guess, in a sense, this hub in the heart of Los Angeles for the faith and family community. I think I'm for you with the movie Unplanned, Run the Race. I don't know if you know Dallas Jenkins. He's got a TV show called The Chosen.
Yep.
So just those come to mind, but there's so many projects that Kappa is involved with, so I'm loosely involved with, to various degrees involved with or not, but just kind of in the flow of all these projects. So it's like this, it's becoming this Los Angeles hub for a lot.
Yeah, it's amazing that a place has become like that, because it doesn't seem like everything's so organized for the Christian film marketplace, but you guys seem to be the central clearinghouse of post-production of it,
We're trying, it was like Paul's attitude. Paul Long is the owner of Kappa. Paul's attitude is just, let's just be that go-to place. And there are times, we'll be talking and, I'll have a friend or someone who has a project. I know it's so small and they don't have a lot of money and, there's very little thing. And I'm like, Paul, is it even worth your time? And Paul's attitude is always because I'm not a post guy, so I'm just kind of I'm introducing him to people and vice versa. But, and I love it. He's such a servant. His attitude is, Brad, we need to talk to everybody. And if we approach it, and this is, isn't this Walking with God 101, where whether it's our work, we don't separate our work from our ministry, from our families, there's no spiritual and secular with us,
Right.
And so our attitude is let's approach everything as a servant. And if we, not to say that we can therefore help everybody on every project, we can't. But, just having that attitude of, okay, we're here to serve. How can we serve? And it's been exciting. And it sounds crazy. Big projects are awesome, but some of the greatest joy I've had in the last year or two has been talking with up-and-coming filmmakers who love God, and I know what their heartbeat is and why they're doing what they're doing. We're able to come help them and get their projects to a higher level.
Huh.
And even help them find distribution.
Wow, really?
So being that, and that's just by God's mercy. This God has put us in this position.
Yeah.
And so we're able to kind of take them, and they don't have a lot of money. And we're able to say, here, we can optimize your show, we can help you out a little bit, and we'll introduce you to all these distributors and stuff, and next thing you know, people are getting deals, and it's just, and it sounds silly, but it's the, really, there's maybe more joy in feeling like we're helping out really the up-and-comers,
Yeah.
Versus, yes, we got, this movie Unplanned is awesome. It's great. We love Chuck and Carrie, who wrote God's Not Dead, and their whole team. And they're one of our bigger ticket, people here in the building. But yet, and obviously the joy of joys to be working with them. And yet, to be working with some of the very, entry level, it's their first film for a lot of people, and just to be able to come alongside of them and help them, as you can imagine, it's a great joy.
Wow. Now, are these people who are coming out of these filmmakers who are entry-level, as you say, are they sort of grassroots doing things on their own, or do they have some studio behind them or some distribution behind them in general?
Yeah, it depends. I'd say in general they're grassroots doing it on their own.
Okay.
Most of them. Yeah, everyone, just I gave my crazy stories about how I got 2 movies made. Selfie Dad, the current one I've directed, as an example, I wrote a 1-page synopsis and essentially got funded.
Wow.
But again, you can't imitate this. I don't have the same story twice, let alone anyone else has my story,
right.
So to your question, yeah, everyone's got their own story. Most of them, if you had to put them in a category between, they're not studio pieces. You know, how they get their money, how they get funded, you know, it's all crazy.
It's really interesting that you're in this place where you're sort of seeing people. You're seeing it from all ends. You're seeing it from the new people coming in. You're seeing it from where the distribution is going. You know, you're sort of like the crossroads of where Christian film is happening. You know.
I think so. It's interesting. You know, it's a good point. I hadn't thought of it like that. But yes, we are very, very much in the flow of a lot of projects. Kind of become our jobs.
Do you see things changing I mean, things are changing. What do you see changing in the distribution market for Christian films?
That's a really great question, and I think we're seeing. I would broaden it out to say just the entire distribution model for film as we know it is changing. And I think the Christian film is just kind of one of every genre that's being affected.
Okay.
Which is, you know, obviously for the DVD market is dwindled, you know, I don't know what percent, 80%, 90%, I have no idea, but it's a lot. Depending on who you talk to.
Yeah.
Right? And as great as the streaming platforms are, they don't make up for the DVD market yet.
Right.
And so they might down the road, or they might not. There's more good news. There's more competition growing for streaming, so maybe it'll help, maybe it won't. I don't know. It is much harder to find a theatrical hit.
Right.
These are just general statements. There's exceptions to everything, but as a general rule, it's harder to get people to drop $12, $13 a pop. I don't know what the nationwide average price for a ticket is, but let's say $12 to go, you know, family of four is going to go to a movie. You might get some pop. That's $100, you know.
Yeah.
It's just, it's hard. And so they're still going to do it, but it's like, wow, I'm going to go see Avengers.
Right.
So it's got to be, hence why these tentpole movies and sequels number 68 are, you know, because they're more surefire. It's harder to get people to go drop that kind of money to go see a lower budget Christian film in theaters.
Hmm.
So in that sense, it's more difficult than it was even 5, 6, 8 years ago.
Right.
I think.
Yeah.
And then of course the DVD market is made it a little bit tougher for cost recoupment. So you just got to be more creative, and it's there. I think, or maybe I'm optimistic here, but I think we're just in a transitional time, and like anything, you know, when times of great transition are also times of great opportunity. You know, if everyone's running for the hills, sometimes, you know, stay the course, you might be able to figure something cool out. So that's kind of where we are, where we're looking at different models, and even I think Selfie Dad is an example of this, where we have kind of reverse engineered this movie to say, here's our cost, here's our number. We backed everything in, which is kind of old school. It's not a new way of doing it, but trying to be mindful where we were working so tight with the distribution team in the budgeting of the movie, in the creating of the movie, in the casting of the movie. And it's, again, that's not a new concept, but I just think it's more important than ever.
Yeah, for sure. So what's in the future for Brad Silverman?
Well, you know, look, I'm on the backside of the 40s, but I still haven't given up hope for the NBA. I think with the contracts that they're divvying up in, you know, for the Lakers, Clippers, I don't know. I just think at 5'6" and uncoordinated, I do think there's okay. Man, I don't know. Like, I appreciate what you're saying. Great question. Okay, my spiritual answer is, man, I just want to be faithful today.
Yeah.
And I've made I'm going to say mistake or fool's errand of, you know, giving my 2, 3, 5 year plan and all that, and it changes dramatically. So I would say this, you know, from a career standpoint, we're having a great time, and the goal is to keep I'm a company guy now, and I want to see Kappa succeed.
Yeah.
And so whatever role I play in that, I am probably certainly the chief writer-director around here. So I'm honored to have a couple TV shows in the works, and then, and then the feature film, and then a spin-off of the feature film into a TV show would be another project we have. So I guess the plan, Todd, is to, just press on and just try to be faithful day by day and try not to get ahead of God and try to be grateful each day and not be so driven as I have been for 30 years for the next project, the next project, the next project. Like, I guess the answer to that's a dumb answer to your question, but just trying to be faithful, humble, and grateful for whatever God has right in front of me.
Brad Silverman, thank you for the encouragement and testimony of your life as a filmmaker. Looking ahead, the guest of my next episode is Brian Mitchell, the Chief Operating Officer of the WTA Group. Also coming up is Brett McCracken, a senior editor at the Gospel Coalition, and his focus is on writing about the arts and culture, and he will talk to us about the place of Christian film. And thirdly, I've been hard at work on our first Senegesis edition, which will focus on deconstructing a great film from a filmmaker's perspective. And that film is Wong Kar-wai's In the Mood for Love. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Ministry of Motion Pictures podcast. You can find us on the web at www.ministryofmotionpictures.org.
What we do in life echoes in eternity.